we go. It's your show. I'll turn it over.
No, this is great. Sorry for all the tech issues. We had some problems this morning, so I had no idea that Chrome doesn't work for whatever reason, but Firefox does, and I'm here. And we're talking all about life purpose, which is really awesome. And Alexis Pierce is here, who is probably one of the best experts on life purpose that I know. She's really brilliant. And yeah, tell everyone a little bit about you, Alexis, before I blabber on.
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of Mike, obviously, and the more he introduces me, the more I'll like him. Thank you for that. I do, oh, look right up, first name Bob. So I do life purpose work. I'm a strategist by training. I used to work for the US government in strategy and focusing on how to get clear on your vision and then align your action to achieve it. And it turns out that's really useful in real life as well, outside of the government. So now I help people do that with their personal lives and with their businesses. So we get really clear on what it is you want to achieve and then figure out how to make it happen with your daily actions. So.
I love that. I've been a client of yours, actually, and you are really, really brilliant. And I see all these hands going up. What does that mean?
Oh, I'm just giving you props.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to dive in because our conversations go really deep, and we're having this because Adina is also listening, and she knows that we start talking, and about 10 minutes in, we always say, God, I wish I recorded this so we can share it with people. Because stuff goes really deep, intensely. So I want to talk about life purpose and just like, what the hell does that mean? Like, it's this huge thing. We're always kind of talking about it. I've read at least 20 books on it myself. I'm sure you and many others here have read plenty of books on it. Like, what the hell is life purpose, and why do we have so much issue trying to figure out what that means?
Yeah. And I just want to say, if anybody's listening and has a question or a thought, absolutely type it in the box so that we can see it and talk about that too. I'm definitely open here. Yeah. So in my way of looking at the world, and it's evolving, right? Like, it's always evolving, and that's what I love about talking to you and talking to other people, is that we get to grow and learn. And one of the things that I know right now is not gelling with me is the idea that your purpose has like one specific outlet. So a lot of people say like, oh, I found my calling and my purpose when I went to nursing school. And it's like, okay, you found, in my way of thinking about it, you found an outlet for your purpose, but being a nurse isn't your purpose. Like, it's not like an end state. It's like an exploration of growth that you can use in all these different areas. So I think one of the hardest, like the things that just people seem so stressed out about is like, they're thinking that their purpose is a career title or a job title, and it's so much pressure because no job feels perfect, right? Like, nothing that we ever do feels 100% great all the time, and we expect our purpose to feel amazing, but nothing feels amazing all the time. And so there's all this like pressure to have this amazing thing that you find and everything works out beautifully from then on, and Cinderella comes and the prince is there and everything's just amazing, but it's not like that. It's in my view at this moment in time, it's this area of growth and exploration. It's this both the painful sides and the pretty sides and everything in between is all of the range of human emotions being experienced around this one specific issue set or issue area. So I view it more as like a dichotomy between feelings. Like, for me, my purpose is exploring that space between feeling enough and feeling insecure, or feeling whole and feeling less than whole. So I'm constantly exploring those spaces, and sometimes that shows up in really empowering ways, like doing work like this, and sometimes it shows up as me feeling really disempowered, crying on the couch. But those are both my purpose showing up. It's just the way that I'm expressing it is different. So that's where I'm working with it now.
I love what you're saying here, especially about it just being this expression. And I think from my work that I really see it as an expression of particular energies that want to be expressed. And you talked about, the good or the bad, we can call it the light or the shadow form. And I really see that showing up as not necessarily the energy being kind of the good side or the bad side, because that's an ego judgment. We're making a judgment that it's good or bad, but it's really the beliefs we're attaching to it that decide if it's good or bad, right? So like, if somebody says something negative about you when you're on stage talking, like, oh my God, is that the negative side of vulnerable? Is that the positive side of vulnerable? It doesn't really matter. We could see, someone could attach a belief and see that as the shadow form of their energies because it's bringing up all their fears. Somebody else could see it as the light form because now they know that they're not resonating with everybody. And when they're vulnerable, they're so true. And so, yes, we're going to experience both the light and the shadow, but that actually has more to do with our ego-based beliefs than it does to do with the actual energy. You know, energy, in my opinion, is this whole vibration. It's just a vibration. You know, it encompasses what we consider the light, the shadow, the good, the bad, all of it, because a vibration is holistic. And to understand it, we humans are kind of splitting that into light and shadow form so that we can get it. Yeah. And that's perfect and that's great, but we really want to understand that, you know, when I give people their 5 or 6 brand energies, and, you know, across the board, people look at them and say, oh my God, I've spent my entire life living in the shadows. I've lived the antonyms of these words. And that's really common because that's their perception of the way they've expressed them. But that doesn't change the fact that it's just expressing the same energies. They've now just put beliefs or expression or perceptions on top of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's one of the things that I find really common with people is that when we get clear on what this main issue area, and I think you and I are really similar in our work, I think I view a lot of those brand energies and I bring them down to the most important one in my way of looking at it. Like, what's the one that's what I call the linchpin of them? But they're all there. They're all playing out all these different areas. And what I've noticed is that people naturally embody what we might call the light side of it. So people around them are going to feel the light side of it, but we may actually experience the shadow side of it. So in our minds, we're horribly insecure, but everybody else views you as confident. Or you feel really isolated and alienated, but everybody thinks you're the most giving, caring, connected person they know. And so it's this, the irony really of playing out. But like you said, it's that duality. And I want to, we've talked about this a little bit, but I want to talk about it a little bit more because I think yoga approaches this in a really interesting way. The idea that the response of good or bad or light or shadow is a perception that we've put on it. And when people talk about karma, most people talk about it as an action reaction. And so like, oh, if I do something good, then something good's going to happen to me. And that's not quite what yoga means by the karmic cycle. What they're really getting at is what you were mentioning and talking about, which is that actions themselves, things that happen themselves are inherently neutral. They're just things that are happening. But beneath all of that is a desire in us to have an outcome. And that desire is either fulfilled or it's disappointed. And when an action happens and we have this unexpressed desire that's either fulfilled or it's disappointed, the emotion of either joy that it was fulfilled or like, oh, goody, look what I got, or the disappointment that it wasn't fulfilled gets registered and stored in our subconscious and unconscious minds as that emotional trigger. And so then the next time an action that's similar happens, we have that emotional reaction of, oh, this is going to go bad, or, oh, this is going to get me what I want. And when we start to have enough stored up emotional memories around neutral actions, then we start to manipulate them. And so we start to look for actions or shape actions or try to make things go so that we feel better and we get things that we want. But then we also get stuck in patterns where we end up tripping up on this disappointing, and we keep tripping ourselves. And that's why we end up in the karmic cycle, not because we're doing bad things and so bad things are happening, because there's no external judgment. There's nothing happening out here other than things that are happening. We're getting stuck in our own cycle because we can no longer see actions clearly. We're seeing them through this really dirty lens of the emotional expectation that we don't even realize we have. And so when you think about your purpose, we have this emotional expectation that it's going to feel and look like all of this amazing flowery stuff. But everything that happens is inherently neutral. And so it's our perception, and it's our distorted perception based on our cravings and that, like we said, the ego-based self, but that like desire to have the way that we want things to go out, that's like forcing us to manipulate our environment. But if we could release some of that stored emotion, which is where yoga goes down that path, release that stored emotion, but also recognize the neutrality of the things that are happening, and then take empowered action to move forward and deliberately choose to do those things that do feel good. We're kind of gaming the system there, but oh well, we're human, that's how it works.
Well, I love what you're saying about the inherent neutrality of life, and I think that this is so important to recognize that so much of our life is inherently neutral, and we, the divine, are assigning meaning to it.
Yeah.
And so, whether that's crystals, whether that's humans, whether that's plants, all aspects of the divine are assigning meaning to, any action. It's not good or bad. This painting behind me, it could be a load of crap to somebody and they pay 2 cents. And I think art is such an epitome of that understanding that we're assigning meaning to this neutrality. It's just the thing. But if it makes me feel my brand energies, if it gives me an emotional response, then that is priceless to me. Whereas to somebody else, it's not necessarily. And so even something like murder, this is so hard for our ego mind to understand, but in murder itself is an inherently neutral action. And in some situations, we actually validate and see murder as a really good thing. In warfare, with death penalty, there are cases where our society actually condones murder because in that situation, we've assigned it a different meaning. We've created particular rules or norms for behavior and given it a purpose. And when I talk about meaning, it's the same thing as purpose. It's really this kind of divinity that we're putting onto things, so giving it a significance. And so, nothing is ever good or bad, and that's where what you were talking about, this idea of perceptions comes into play, where we are creating a judgment about something that really just is, and we can then, that's really empowering, because if it just is, we can always rewrite the story. And that's why in my work, I call it the express energy, where we actually go back in and rewrite our stories through our brand energies as fairy tales. And we start to understand that even the worst thing that happened to you in your entire life actually just was, and you've assigned it meaning, and you can retake that meaning, because all it's been doing is teaching you more and more about what I call brand energies, or your purpose. It's just kind of diving deeper and exploring those energies more. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's actually my favorite part, when everyone says, oh, why do you do the work that you do? It's like, for me, my absolute favorite part of the work that I do is that moment where somebody, we get to what their purpose is, this issue area, the light and dark of what they're navigating in this life. And then I ask, well, looking back in your life, does that make sense? I mean, does that make sense with what's happened in your life? Does that way of looking at the world, or that lens, or that issue area, for me, it's always opposite. So connection versus alienation, worth versus not worthy, those types of things. Does that explain the pain that you've had in your life and the things that you've experienced in your life? And that moment of realization where people go, oh, all that horrible stuff that happened to me wasn't off purpose. Like, I was still living my purpose even though I felt so wretched. It's like this beautiful moment of, I guess, acceptance that you can't be off your purpose. You can't be. It is who you are. And so there's never a moment when you're separate from it. Even the times where you feel like it's not very purposeful in your actions, it's still embodied in who you are and everything that you're going through. But like you said, you're just exploring the really deep sides of it. And I think especially for people who want to be deliberate about using their purpose in their business, this is a real opportunity for us, because if we've explored the painful sides of these things, if we'd explored the painful sides of what you call brand energies, or what I call purpose and ideal feelings, then what your people are going through. It's not going to look the same. It's not going to end up being the same. It's not going to be to the depth that you've explored it, because it's your specific issue. But you know what that's like, and the more you know about it on this side, the more you know about it on this side, because it's a trajectory, not a linear one, but it's connected, and so you can guide people through that process because you know all the spaces in between there.
So I love what you're saying here, and I really want to be conscious of the fact that me and you go whoosh. So bringing it back to what it may be applicable or actionable for people, is that everybody's already on their purpose and living it. And I believe that so wholeheartedly, that every moment, every breath you take has been on purpose. Now we can see that as either light or shadow form, but it's still the purpose. So we could see that as the antonym, or the synonym, but it's actually the exact purpose that we're living. And so that means that the clues are inherently there. The clues about everything you want are already there. And I really see the difference between kind of living your purpose and then fully manifesting or embodying it, really being the split that I see. Because on some level, you're always on purpose. There's not one action you could do that is off purpose. It's your core vibration of being. But on the other level, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's every fiber of your body, every cell of your body that you're bringing forward, so that all of your decisions are being driven by this very action, so that all of your thoughts are being driven by this, so that you're shifting your perceptions to the highest form of this purpose. And so I see those as two very different things. And this latter, I like to talk about as authenticity. We use this word all the time, like, oh, just be authentic. Like, it's the easiest thing in the world to do, right? Like, oh, just be authentic. And that's great, but what the hell does that mean? And for me, what that means is just being conscious, really bringing that purpose that's driving our subconscious behaviors to the conscious level, so that I can say, I want to feel successful. Wearing this makes me feel successful. Or talking to you makes me feel successful. I want to feel aligned. Doing my spiritual practices make me feel aligned. And the second I bring it to the conscious level, I now can embody it deeper. I can bring that into the world and make it accessible to other people. So whereas it's something that I'm kind of subconsciously sharing, I'm now able to bring a little bit more conscious. And I think what's so powerful about that, there's so many things that are so powerful about that for me, but one of them is just how we're making it real and accessible to the world. We're now taking it from something that was maybe less tangible for us and really bringing it into the accessible for us, even though we've always been living that purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's what I do. So that's where I think strategy is actually so important, and people talk about it, or maybe they think about it like it's this sort of boring addendum that you put onto things, but it's actually a framework to approach life. And it doesn't have to be this painful process that just sort of sits over here that we check every now and then, because that might be a plan, but a strategy is something different. A strategy is how you align what you do to where you want to go. And I see this all the time in people where we have this desire, right? Like we have this really inkling desire that I want to be something, or this desire that I want to feel calmer, or this, urge to be more peaceful. And that's all we have, is this vague notion that we want something, or this really fuzzy feeling that we want something. And then we don't know how to connect it to what we do on a daily basis. So instead we do what we do all the time, which is, run the kids to school, run them back and forth here, like make dinner, watch TV. Like we haven't changed our lives, but our lives on a daily basis are what are creating those feelings about who we are and what we are. So if we want to change how we feel on that upper level, if we want to change how we're able to get at what we actually want and focus on what we want, then we change all of the actions down here that are leading us to it. And when, like you said, we can be more deliberate in those choices. And it's the same thing that yoga would say with the karmic cycle, is that when you continue to just gut react and gut react and gut react to what's going on in your life, you've trapped yourself in your own pattern of distorted thinking and your own pattern of disillusionment and all of those, big words that we could go into from a yogic perspective. But if you choose to be more awake and you choose to be more conscious about how you want to move through the world and who you want to be and how you want to show up, then you're able to navigate all of those daily actions with more awareness and choose specific ones that are going to help you feel how you want to feel. And this is where Danielle Laporte's work with Ideal Feelings comes really handy, or the work I know that both of us do on feelings, that your feelings are like your guideposts. They're giving you daily, every moment by moment feedback. Are we moving in a direction we want to go, or are we not? Now, that doesn't mean that bad feelings are off purpose. It means that they're giving you information, right? They're giving you information about either your beliefs, your actions, your relationships, your habits. They're giving you information about something. You don't have to choose to stay with that something. You can flip it to the other side and keep moving in that direction. So one of the really the powerful things about getting clear on your vision and getting clear on what it is that you actually want for yourself and how you want to feel, and like you say, the brand energies that you want to bring to the world, is that you can then use those to map your way forward. And you can use those to say, well, does this activity that I'm doing every day lead me closer or further to that? Because otherwise, why am I doing it? If I want to feel healthy and I go to McDonald's every day, my actions aren't helping me feel how I want to feel. They're just not. So we have to look at those things and be really honest about them. But with that awareness and insight, we can make more conscious choices that help us get to where we actually want to go.
Well, thank you. Totally. And I think, so much of what you're saying I really love thinking about here. And I love thinking about the idea that it's what we want to feel, but it's also what we want to share or give to other people. It's the life we want to create. And so there's this kind of inherent connection we have to our audience, which are the people that we feel most connected to. The very people we want to feel, actually we want to heal or help them in the same way that we want to feel it. And that means that our brand energies or our vision, our gift to the world. It's the very thing that we actually can give to the world. And I love thinking about this because the universe couldn't give a shit if you're a life coach. Like, it doesn't matter, that is such a specific thing. And so often we think, I've got my purpose, I'm a writer. Well, that's a vehicle for getting your purpose out there, but that is by no means a purpose, and limiting yourself to that place is really putting a lot of eggs in one basket. It's very challenging if you feel your life purpose as a writer and then it fails. Then you feel your purpose as a life coach and it fails. And I think so often, especially spiritual entrepreneurs, are bouncing between thing and thing and thing because it's so confusing and this thing just isn't working. And they're saying, if this is really my purpose, why is it not working out for me? And what I really encourage people to do is think deeper. Okay, that's a vehicle. What are you actually giving people? There are millions of life coaches out there, and they're all well and good, I'm sure, but not every life coach is the same. And nobody wants a life coach. I'm sorry, but I don't want to hire a life coach. I don't want to hire an energy healer. I don't even want a strategist. I want the strategist so that I can be successful. I want a strategist so I can be clear. I want an energy healer so I can feel good and abundant and all these other things. That's what I'm really looking for. Now, I don't give a shit if you snap your fingers. I don't give a shit if you make me take a 6-week course. I don't care if you throw me into a group coaching program. I don't care how you do it. If you can make me successful right now, that's it. And that's what we really need to understand. The purpose is that deeper thing that is running throughout your entire life, whether in light or shadow form, because we're creating that judgment around it. But it's that thing running through our lives. And I've had so many clients come to me and say, I'm all over the place, Mike. You're never going to figure out my branding. I'm everywhere. I've been, ESL teacher. I've been a sign language teacher, interpreter. I've been a energy healer. It doesn't make any sense. And as we start to understand what is the deeper connection between these things, we really begin to understand actually connection. This person is helping people to connect to their own divinity, connect to their healing, connect to themselves, connect through language. Like, there's so many ways. That's the thing that's actually interesting. And these were just different vehicles for doing it. And our relationships are vehicles, our personal life. I mean, we have so many vehicles to communicate these energies, but that's our gift to the world. And it's what we most want and what we inherently share just by being ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let me explain it in a totally different way. So if people are like, yeah, that makes sense, let me give you exactly the same thing, but in totally different language. Because Mike and I do the same thing, but we look at it very differently. So let me lay it out in like a framework you could see on paper. So if you start, so Mike, in my opinion, from a strategic view, started here and went up. And I'm going to start here and go down, but it's the same thing in 2 different directions, right? So if you start with something like your soul's ideal vision of the world, which sounds like it's a really hard thing to get to, but actually most people can get there really, really quickly. All we have to do is acknowledge that it's impossible, like that world is impossible. Because as soon as we're completely free of restraints and constraints and restrictions and all of that, and we don't need to have any of the trappings of this world, the soul is like, oh, hallelujah, like, let me play around here. And we know how we want people to feel. We know that, some people might say, oh yeah, we're all inherently connected. And because we're connected, we know that we're not going to make fun of each other. So you're totally safe to pursue what you want and to show up in your quirky awesomeness. Like, we know those deeper feelings that we have. And maybe that relates for you or resonates for you. And maybe something totally different resonates for you. For me, my ideal world is, it's a beautiful space, but it's peaceful. It's very, very peaceful. There's no taking and grabbing, and because everybody feels like they're totally enough. They're totally whole in and of themselves. So they're like, hey, you're cool. I'm good. Great. Good. We'll all just be here chilling around. Impossible, right? Of course, in this reality. But that's what my soul thinks is true. And so when I look at that world that I'm living in, on some level, my energy is living in that space. And it's having to deal every day with this space where we are now in this reality. And my struggles are coming from the interplay of those two. My soul waking up in that beautiful ideal world every day and then being in this world and going, how am I supposed to approach this? And some of the pain I feel is a result of that disconnect. But the beauty that I bring to the world is that piece of my ideal world coming through. So for my ideal world, everything is encapsulated by what I call enoughness, or feeling like you're enough. So everything I do from when I was a little kid up until now has been helping people feel like they're enough, because that's the gift that I naturally bring. And I bring it to friendships. I bring it deliberately to my yoga students. I bring it to my coaching clients. I bring it in meditation. Like, it's just what I do. But I explore very often the opposite of that, because I'm living in this world where it's not ideal in my soul sense. And so I'm having to grapple with that. But like you said, you can take that ideal vision, you can take that, what I call the linchpin of that vision, which is your purpose, the one piece that has to be there for the rest of your vision to play out beautifully. And when you have that core element, that core belief, or that core feeling that really encapsulates what you're here to express, then you can make choices of how to express that and look across the things in your life. So in a strategic view, there's all these categories, right? There's your relationships, there's your career, there's your community support, there's your spiritual life, there's your physical life and embodiment and health. And you can look across all those different categories and say, well, where am I off? What's happening here in all of these different areas that are helping me either feel like I'm more of what I want to feel, or feel like I'm less of what I want to feel, and what can I do in those spaces to change it, and to choose actions that help me feel how I want to feel and help me create that vision that I'm living in on some level, on a deep level. Ooh, we got people joining. Hi.
Hey, awesome. Hey, guys. So I love what you're saying so much, and I think that there's so much here too. I think that there's really this inherent permission giving that's going on here, right? Like, you're talking about, how can I make these conscious decisions to feel what I want to feel, to create that life? Now that I can kind of see the epitome or highest point, even if it's not possible, how can I work towards that vision? Now I have an ideal to work towards. And that, for me, is really about giving yourself permission. Because if you have that vision, then that means that's inherently a part of who you are. You're already connected to that vision. Your soul sees that world, even if it's not practical to exist in the real life. And if you're already that thing, then it's not looking outside of yourself to become this. It's just giving yourself permission internally. And so if, in my words, in some of my brand energies, I'll tell you, are aligned, zany, unmistakable, free, vulnerable, and successful. And if I want to give myself permission to be successful at any moment, it's not that my ego wants something in this moment. It's that I just want to come home to who I already am. I am successful. I make people feel successful in every moment of every day. That's who I am, and I always have access to that. So if I choose, and I really talk about implicit permissions throughout the day, which is really what you're talking about with conscious action. Putting on a blazer, a sport coat that makes me feel successful. Having a haircut that makes me feel successful. Wearing my watch that makes me feel successful. Only working with people who really honor me and make me feel successful. Doing my spiritual practices that make me feel aligned. As I go through my day and continue to make these decisions that are implicitly giving myself permission to be who I already am, now it's not just that I'm manifesting this vision, but I'm actually putting myself directly into this alignment with my soul's vibration.
Right.
And without getting too quantum physics here, we all know that energy always flows to its own vibration. And so it's really, really easy to have energy flow abundantly and effortlessly, because all we're doing is just living or manifesting the life that we already have on the inside. It's very, very simple.
Yeah. Yeah, and you brought up a couple things that I think are really important. And one of them is that this idea of permission, and that can show up in any number of different ways. So a lot of times, like for me, I can focus on it being a permissive aspect of accepting who I am. I can focus on it in the context of feeling like I'm enough versus feeling insecure. It doesn't matter what angle you take on it or what you use as your sort of trigger to remind yourself. But it's that in every moment we have all of these layers above us, or layers of social programming and what our parents think and what we're supposed to think. We have all of this stuff going on this level, on this body, reality, human level. And we also have that deeper voice talking to us, and we have this deeper calling, and we have this way that we want to show up and be in the world. And so every moment of every day, we get the opportunity to be more of that. And so giving permission or recognizing it or saying, oh, in this moment, am I choosing that deeper voice, or am I choosing a habit or a pattern that I may have fallen into because I think that's how I behave in this moment, or that's what I learned about how to be in this moment. And that's where we get back into that karmic cycle, right? We're just going based on assumptions of what we think this moment is calling for, and we're tripping ourselves up in our own expectations and perspective. And we've talked about this privately, but I guess we're about to talk about it publicly. But one of the beauties of moving beyond choice and awareness, definitely, exactly, thank you. Who are you, Soulful Interior? Ooh, Soulful Interior, I like that. Should rename the Department of Interior that. But what I really like about, when we're starting to burn off our own karma, we do that not by doing lots of really good actions, because again, there's no external judgment here. It's about internal perception and distortion of and expectations. But you and I have both had an experience of this quite recently, where all of a sudden, when you've made the choice for yourself over and over and over again, and you've aligned yourself so deeply with what you're here to embody and express, all of a sudden you reach this point of neutrality. And it truly is neutral, where everything becomes just what it is. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm going through a bunch of actions, and the world is going through a bunch of actions. And I'm not even saying that my actions are necessarily good, because they just feel like my actions. They're actually neutral in and of themselves. And all of a sudden, you're in this space of what feels for me like really huge freedom, because you're like, no, I'm just doing this. I'm not even attached to it. I'm not even committed to it per se. It's not like I'm going to box this in and be really like, no, this is the work that I'm doing in the world. It's like, nope, and this is the stream that I'm flowing through, and all of the other streams are flowing around, and you're like, great, have fun flowing. I'm flowing this way. And that moment of what I feel is like very, very neutral towards everything around you is really empowering, because you've made those decisions enough that you're finally in the space of yourself. Because karma is a huge topic. We talked about it in the beginning, so check out this recording when it comes out. But basically, karma is a concept that comes out of the yoga world, and it's about, most people interpret it about being stuck in a cycle of good and evil, but really, from a yogic view, it's getting stuck in a cycle of having expectation on action. So you have something that happens, you have an expectation that it's going to go in a one way or another, and that way is going to feel good or bad, and so you start to manipulate the system, and that gives you this distorted perspective. And from a yogic view, all action is spontaneous. It's both psychological and physical. Psychological mainly. From a yogic view, thoughts are considered to be spontaneous and in the moment. But when they have to go through this mud of perception that we've created over a lifetime of actions and reactions and disappointments and expectations, then it gets a little messy in there. So what we're talking about here is when we start to move beyond that space, and we start to see ourselves more clearly, and see actions for what they are, and see our own expectations and our own programming and our own social everything that's been layered on top of us. All of a sudden we sort of pop out in this neutral space. And Mike and I have been talking about this privately, and you're like, oh, well, that's different, because you're not attached.
I love what you're saying. I really want to comment on that latter part about the neutral space. And it's, what's really interesting is we're here talking about discovering your life purpose. And the truth is, on some level, what you're really discovering is that you've always been living it. And so it sounds like what you're saying, what I definitely am saying, is that even being on or off purpose is a judgment in and of itself. Yeah. And you actually can't be off purpose on some really deep level, because everything about your life is just unfolding the unique vibrations of who you are. So it's just a form of expression, and we're making judgments. Oh, that's light or shadow form. Oh, that's on or off purpose. But actually, it's just being you and just unfolding into a deeper and deeper space of you. And so I think that what has happened to me really recently, when we talk about that neutrality, is actually moving in the space of like, oh, I have something out there, I want to put it out to the world, I'm just going to put it out to the world. And in the past, where I maybe thought, oh my God, am I being too promotional? Am I successful or not successful? Am I being too vulnerable or not vulnerable enough? And really looking at the light and shadow form of my words, I'm just kind of like, F it. Yeah. I feel called to do this, I'm doing it. It's just an action, and all it can do is create results that I can perceive any which way I want to. Exactly. I'm creating the attachment to the perception itself. And so all I'm really doing, if we're honest here, is just sitting in a sandbox, being a little kid, playing with these energies and just having fun. And then, our human side comes in and starts creating attachments to calling those light or shadow form, calling those good or bad, so that we can keep ourselves safe. And we really want to honor that because, that's absolutely important. We need to feel safe. But on some level, the discovering your life purpose is really just about discovering that you're always on your purpose, and then how do you align your business or your life with that vision by really manifesting and embodying it on the deepest level possible.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I wish my yoga teacher was listening to this, because we'd be like, yes, we're burning through karma now. Because as soon as you hit that space of I'm just doing this, and I no longer have expectations about what that's going to mean, all of a sudden we're in a really, really free, beautiful space. Like beautiful space. And you can take whatever action you want and have whatever consequence you want, because it's all about what you determine it.
And I love that, because it's going back to what we were talking about at the beginning about how the world is inherently neutral, and we're assigning meaning to the world because we are the divine. And I think so often we're not even conscious about how powerful we are and how much we're assigning meaning to everything in our lives, and we can witness this. We have that, friend who somebody can say a negative comment to, and it just like brushes off the shoulder. Like it's not a big deal, but to somebody else, that can be a huge trigger. And so we're assigning the meaning to these things. And when we have that gut reaction of like, oh my God, that triggers me, it's actually an invitation to look at why is there so much meaning there? What does that mean for me? And how is that communicating my purpose more? So even in the kind of negative things or the triggers which happen to us so often, we can actually start to witness what that's telling us about our purpose. If I feel triggered about, being seen, what's that telling me about me? How can I learn what beliefs I'm attaching to the energies of who I am?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and not to take this conversation in a totally different direction, but this is actually what I've been talking about with my meditation students, is that we can be in that state of realized just experience at any moment. But in that space, we can witness ourselves judging things. We can witness ourselves having reactions. We can witness ourselves wanting things. We can witness ourselves desiring and clinging and being upset and all of these things. But witnessing them isn't a bad thing. In fact, that's the moment where we have power, because we're like, okay, I feel that. Do I have to go along with it? Okay, that's my gut reaction. Do I have to believe it? Does it have to mean anything? Can I just have the experience without having the meaning that I might normally attach to it? And that's such a freeing space.
I love that. And I think that it's really important also to acknowledge and honor just that human aspect of our lives. Like we can have this really deep conversation. Great. I'm going to throw in a load of laundry after this, Like I'm just a human being.
Got the dog.
Exactly, and that's okay, and that's really perfect. And I think that it's so powerful for us to allow ourselves to feel and experience every aspect of being human, because that's why we're here. Even those triggers and those thoughts and those beliefs and the kind of whatevers that are going on. And like you're talking about, being able to witness it from that non-judgmental place, and even having neutrality around that, and just saying like, okay, that doesn't mean anything. This is all exploration that I'm going through. And it's so hard to understand this, but even the worst, darkest, most shameful moments of our life are neutral, and they're just expressions in our life, and we can look at them and we can create our own judgment or story around them, but they in themselves are nothing. They're just an action or an expression, and we can especially, I've been playing with past life stuff with this, and really looking at, I've got my nifty pendulum that can help me go deep with this, and understand how my energies were playing out not just in this life, but in so many past lives, and understanding, what I was expressing there, and what I was trying to express, and looking at any attachments that I'm still carrying over from those situations.
Yeah. No, I don't think actually, Cheryl, that trigger points do need to be healed. I think they need to be acknowledged. And that's when, especially in this state of awareness, when we see things, if we react to them, I mean, healing is a reaction, right? It's as if we're doing something to something, but all we need to do is see that something, and that something will either dissolve on its own or it'll move on its own. But the concept, I mean, you can say, yes, we can heal them in the sense that we're paying attention, because paying attention is energy, right? And paying attention is the healing. But the attention's all it takes. and we can still bring all sorts of tools into it. I mean, Mike and I work with some amazing gifted healers, and they're incredible because they help move energy through, but what they're really doing is helping you on one level or another. It doesn't have to be conscious. It can be subconscious or unconscious, allowing those energies to move through, be recognized, and move on, or go back into the balance and the place that they want to be with everything else.
I love this question, Cheryl. Thank you. I want to comment on this. I was getting ready to comment. So basically, I really love this. In my work, actually, one of the energies, and I know you know this, Cheryl, is heal. It's the heal energy. I mean, I purposely use that word because it can be such a trigger word for so many people. But really, the way I define heal is just a natural unfolding deeper and deeper into your soul's energies or your soul's expression. And that none of that is good or bad. You know, nothing needs to be healed as in fixed. It's really just, you know, because we're carrying these unique vibrations, we're attracting in the people, places, situations to help us to express them more, or learn about them more, or teach them more, all these, you know, words that really are forms of expression. And so as that's happening, it's an invitation to continue going deeper into these words. And it's not that we need to fix anything because nothing's wrong with us. We actually invited this and manifested this situation so that we could learn and express and play a little bit more. And so when we talk about triggers, it's giving us powerful information about who we already are, and we can look at our beliefs around that and decide if they're empowering or not, and if we want to shift them. But there's nothing we have to heal or fix. It's just giving us information and giving us opportunity to play. And I also want to comment on what Alexa said about that, you know, when we gain awareness, we can actually help them dissolve. And it's really interesting because to me, this speaks to specificity of intention. When we can get that specific with intention, I mean, it's easy to say, I want to be happy, right? But when we understand, okay, what beliefs do I have that are blocking my happiness? And we start to look at those objectively and get that specific with our attention, just the intention to look at it, watch it, observe it, and let it integrate as it needs to, will shift it naturally. And so that's what I mean when I say we are way more powerful than we even begin to realize. We have the ability to actually dissolve and shift our beliefs on the spot. And all we have to do is get that specific with awareness so that we know exactly what the thought is.
Yeah, there's a question here, and while Mike reads it, I'll just answer because I imagine we're both going to answer the same, which is that to get clear on your vision and get clear on the ways that you are moving through the world. So which Mike calls brand energies, I call your purpose and ideal feelings. But getting clear on what it is that you're here to express so that you can be conscious about how you bring them into your life.
Yeah, so I don't want to cut you off.
No, please.
Okay, good. So, so from my perspective, I mean, to have a good life ahead, that's such a really big question. But at the same time, what I think, even that in itself is a judgment. And so I would just invite you to have a really rich life. And that's really the way I see it. You know, inviting in the good and the bad, because the bad is actually just a judgment we're putting on it. And it's really inviting in more lessons to go deeper into our energies. And so what I really always recommend for people is to start to look at those patterns that weave through every aspect of your life. You know, what energies are constantly being brought to the table? And this is the work that I do. I actually spend 2 hours. I put everything about a person on a whiteboard and actually compact it down from, you know, maybe 100 things that they want a person to feel down to just 5 or 6. And those 5 or 6 words are what I consider a life purpose. They're what they're constantly expressing in every moment. They're what they're giving to people, they're what they want to feel, they're everything about a person. And so as we start to identify the patterns that are already existing in your life, that's where energy flows for you. That's where your life is already trying to express itself. And if you stay consciously along that path, things are going to unfold for you in marvelous ways. I mean, if you're looking into a relationship, well, thank you, Cheryl, about the best to our investment. But as you're looking to a relationship, you know, I want to make sure that I'm with somebody who helps me to feel vulnerable and safe. Somebody who helps me feel successful, someone who helps me feel unmistakable. If someone can't help me feel that, it's not for me because it's not allowing me to go deeper into my energies. As I'm looking for a job, you know, as you're graduating school and looking for a job, I would want to look for somebody who could help me go deeper into those energies because I want the full richness of those energies and I want to begin to remove any judgments or perceptions that might be stopping me from being able to kind of live that rich life without being afraid that sometimes it's not always going to be pleasant, but maybe those are the lessons I need to work through those beliefs that I have around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I was being very human and Snapchatting this moment.
No, it's good. It's awesome. And I love, thank you, Alexis, first of all. Thank you for saying that. And, you know, I have to tell you about one of my words. This is just a personal story, but one of my brand energies is unmistakable. And for so long, I really thought about that being one of a kind, being unique, you know, not being able to be copied. And I love that. And one day someone said to me, oh, like, you can't make a mistake. And I was like, oh, okay. So as I've really dove deeper into this, because there are no coincidences, and I love playing with the etymology of these words and playing with synonyms and all, you know, all the energy I pack into it. And one thing I think that has been so powerful at helping me move on this path of neutrality and really removing the judgments I have around the words is that I literally can't make a mistake. Right. Nothing is a mistake because there are no mistakes. I can take an action and there can be a result and I have a perception of that result, but none of that is a mistake. And if I choose to do a different action, that's perfectly fine, but I would never be empowered with that information without making the first action. And so it's really powerful to begin to understand that, like, it doesn't matter. I can stutter right now. I can swear. I can make, you know, totally forget what I'm about to say, but none of that is a mistake. It's just an unfolding into who I am. And that, for me, really encapsulates what life purpose is about. Yeah. Life purpose is just living the kind of unique vibrations of who you are, good or bad, you know, whatever, just living them and removing those judgments around it so that you can just share it and make it accessible to everybody else here on earth.
Yeah, exactly. And you and I have talked about this, but it came up for me while you were just speaking, is that you spontaneously came to this the other day, and I thought, well, that really matches a way that yoga looks at it, is that we have this inherent oneness, right? Like everything is one and life is fine as it is. And you can just translate that to the neutrality, or you can translate that to connection, or you can translate that to love, like whatever it is, there's this oneness. But in order to, experiencing that oneness is very challenging because we're separate, right? Like we're like an individual blade of grass. There's lots of other grass around us, and we know that we're connected somehow, but we are an individual blade of grass. And so that's a hard thing to get around, to know that we're one but yet separate at the same time. So to explore that from a yogic perspective, we move into something called tantric philosophy, or dualism: masculine, feminine, black, white, good, bad, painful, pleasurable. You know, we start to have these polarizations, but they're along the same spectrum. And so that spectrum is still the oneness, right? It's connected because you go all the way around and you find yourself at the other end. And so it's in this circle. Everything's connected in this holistic piece, and there's still the unity, but we explore the unity by finding the polarized sides of it. And so even if you think, oh, I can never feel worse, and then you feel a little bit worse and you feel a little bit worse, good, because that means you're going to feel a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better, because you're stretching the perception of this unity and of through the exploration of the dualism. So all of those ways that you feel, because Mike and I are really feeling based, and yes, we do believe in the law of attraction for the most part in the vibrational sense, that you can be delivered in your vibration. Yeah, exactly. So that's how yoga approaches it. And yoga is just one way of describing these truths, right? Because if Mike can come to them spontaneously on his own, and other people around the world can come to these conclusions on their own, and we can all feel them in some way, we can describe them in any different way. But yoga describes it through dualism. And yeah, it's really powerful work. And so there isn't a moment where you're mistaken. There isn't a moment where you're off, because you're on this circle, right? You're on the track. You can't like fall off. You're just on a different spot in the unity.
Oh gosh. All right. Well, I could go on for about 20 minutes here. I'm going to try to keep it brief, but thank you. Now this is really the meat that I want to get into. When we're talking about that light and shadow form, or that judgment we're placing on things at the beginning, that's the duality that Alexis is talking about here. And, you know, I, through my work, give people a particular lens to look at everything in life. So it's just a lens to understand their life, these 6 brand energies, and we can look at everything through that lens. So this moment is either successful or unsuccessful for me. It's somewhere on that spectrum of that tension, but that both are the same vibration. And that's what's really, I think, so challenging to understand, but also so empowering, is when we look at our lives and we see, oh my God, I've been living in the shadows for so long. Yes, but it's the shadow form of the light that you have. It's the same vibration. And so it's actually that unity. Even the darkest moments, even our worst mistakes are bringing us to unity.
Right.
And that is so powerful in itself. But what Alexis also said, which I think is so over the top powerful, is the fact that both of us, through different vehicles and different ways of being, have actually arrived at similar truths. And what I really see that as is, we can all start anywhere. I don't care where you start. You can be a fashion designer, you can be a writer, you can be a life coach. It doesn't really matter. Because everything is divine, then everything is divine. Like, we are all divine, so no matter where you start, it's part of the divine. And the more we pull those threads again and again and again, we actually come closer to the exact same thing. We come closer to the divine. And I have seen the most powerful ways that people have come from really out there fields, moving closer and closer to the same truths that I'm working on. I work with an energy healer. I work with a scientist who replicates vibrations in crystals. And some of our work is basically becoming exactly the same now, even though the work is actually very, very different. Me and Alexis do very different work, but it actually moves closer and closer the deeper we get into it.
Every day.
Every day.
This call proved it. I was like, oh yeah, why are we different people?
Exactly. And I think that that's really speaks to the full unity of the universe. We are constantly moving closer to one another as we dig deeper into our life purpose. And so, to address the question about law of attraction, I do see law of attraction, but I really see it sometimes different than other people talk about it, which is that, energy always flows to its own vibration, but oftentimes with law of attraction, we just want to be like, oh, I want to think good thoughts, and good things are going to happen to me. And that even in itself is still in that duality or judgment-based thinking, because it's like good and bad thoughts. Saying that this is a negative thought and I don't want it, it's even placing a judgment on it. And maybe that's a need or an emotion that needs to come forward and needs to be processed and integrated. And so, from my way of being and way of thinking is that as we move deeper and deeper into these brand energies, whether in light or shadow form, as we move deeper and accept them and embody them deeper, actually we're attracting everything that is related to them. And that's what we most want to feel. It's what I give to the world, but it's also what we most want to feel. So as I put on the clothing that makes me feel successful, as I look at areas that I feel unsuccessful and look at my stories around them, as I, do all of these practices, I'm inviting more success into my life. But it's only because my way of being or my way of embodying my purpose is strengthening, so I'm actually inviting more lessons and teachings around that, more expressions around that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Love that description. Yeah. Yeah, the judgment piece is where we trip up, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's so human. Even, it's funny, but we can get so caught up in judging the judgment, right? Yeah. And it's a spiral. And I think that, the first step for many people is just that level of awareness. Yeah. And, there are many ways to do it. There's yoga, there's meditation, there's, through my work, it's a more intellectual way of understanding where we can look at something objectively, take the emotion out of it, understand it, and then bring the emotion back in from a new place. And I know a lot of your work is very similar. Yeah,
it's just that, I feel like we're helping, I don't know quite what the phrase is for this, but it's like we just gently lift the veil a little bit. It's like we're putting a thinner fabric there, right? So like we're just switching out the fabrics of the veil to make it thinner and thinner. And there's lots.
I love what you're saying, because what's so powerful is that actually when we do that, we begin to see the unseen forces or that thread weaving throughout all of our lives. And I see that as brand energies, and Alexis sees that as your vision and your ideal feelings. But what's really happening is the same thing is being replicated over and over again in every single moment. And as we start to pull back the judgment and pull back that thread, we actually now are seeing the weaving happening. And everything just seems a little bit clearer. It makes a little bit more sense. And even the bad moments don't seem so bad. But it's like, oh, this is necessary. This is something I have to move through because it's exposing to me beliefs I have them attaching to these particular judgments or perceptions I have them attaching.
Yeah. Let me give one final metaphor for people to take away, because it's something I've been working with lately, and I think it'll encapsulate what we've been saying, or really the root of what we were saying when we started. And see what you think of this, Mike. So lately I've been thinking about your purpose as the thread, like a thread of a necklace, and all the different ways that you bring your purpose to life as the different beads. So your necklace can have 10 beads on it because you're you know, a professional athlete, and you're a mom, and you're a coach, and you're a this, like, and a writer, and a TV actress, and all these things. Like, you can have 10 different beads on it, but the thread going through them is that core exploration and expression of who you are. It's that purpose tying through all of those, or what I would say is, you know, your purpose and your message, that core linchpin to your vision. Or your necklace could have 2 beads on it, or it could have 5 beads, and those beads can change all the time because the way that you bring your purpose to life might change all the time. But we're looking for what's that central thread among them that you can learn how to express in all of these different ways.
I couldn't agree more. That's such a beautiful metaphor, and I think that really does capture everything we've been saying, that we need to understand that these things we often call life purpose are really vehicles. There are different beads on that thread. It's not the thread itself. And the challenge or the precaution when we're putting all of our eggs into that basket of one little bead, if that bead breaks, we fall apart.
Right.
And it's not that, you know, we've still got the thread going on. And so I think it's really important to remember, like, when we say, oh my God, my purpose is a writer, I figured out my purpose is a writer now. Well, if your book doesn't sell, you feel like you've just fallen to shit.
Right.
And that is not really your purpose. That's a vehicle for getting your purpose out there, but there are infinite vehicles for getting our purpose out there. And I really want to leave you, if I can leave with something here, and leave you all with this one story about a client of mine who was creating a crystal grid experience. And it was incredible. It was this really amazing thing she was creating. And she was talking about it, and she loves when I tell the story. So
it's a good story. I'm excited to hear it again.
It's a good story. And she was talking about it in a video to invite people to join her on this journey. And all she did was talk about the experience. And I watched the video, and I said, this is not your brand energies. This isn't you. Nobody knows what they're really getting. And she said, yeah, they do. They know that they're getting, you know, this experience. I said, no. That's not what they're getting. That's a vehicle to what they're really getting. So she shifted up. She used her brand energy. She put in a lot of makeup. One of her words is beautiful. She had this magical board behind her. One of her words is magical. She was very emotional and sharing love. She hardly talked about the experience. She did a little bit to let people know what they were getting, but she really talked straight and gave people what they wanted, what they really, really wanted underneath. And within minutes, people were buying like crazy. And even better than that, some people said to her, I didn't care what you were selling. You just look so beautiful. I wanted to know your secrets. And that's what we want to remember, is that we have a unique purpose, is what we're actually giving people, and it's consistent through every moment of our lives. And it's not just these little beads. It's actually that necklace, that thread that's going on beyond everything.
Exactly. So be you. That sums it up.
So be
you. Mike and I are going to share some links in there in the chat box about the programs that we both have going on right now. Where we both, as you've heard from this, work on this area of purpose and how to bring it to life through your business. So if you want to check out mine, I just put it in the box. And Mike, if you have your link, you can pop it in the box.
Yes, let me pull that up. But while I'm pulling it up, Alexis, can you talk about yours a little bit?
Yeah. So mine is called, my program that's going on right now, it opens, we start on the 25th. Of this month, and it's called Profit on Purpose, and the goal is to create a business. Create a business that's aligned with your purpose. So we start at your big vision. So I'm a strategist, so we go through it strategically. We start at the big vision, get your big vision in life, your soul's purpose, and then we translate that into what's your business mission, what's your message, who's the audience that is inherently connected to all of those things that you can uniquely help with your specific way of looking at the world and being in the world, plus all of your skills and everything that you bring into your business. And then creating an offer that meets your audience where they are and matches them with the gifts that you can bring them. So it's a process that goes all the way from your purpose down to a viable offer, so you can start profiting in your business in a way that really feels deeply on purpose with who you are.
I love that. I mean, Alexis's work, I'm a huge fan. I've been a client of hers. I'll tell you a little bit about the Sacred Circle self-study. Yeah. This is exciting for me because I've been running for over 6 months now, Sacred Circles, and they were invite-only programs that up to 20 people could journey with me every single month. And they would go through really intense material. What we've talked about today is just the first week. So we go, we find your brand energies and understand them, and then we take them further into the mastering side, or how we put them out and create and kind of manifest a life with them, or create an entire business with them. We look at the value or the receiving side. We talk about money blocks. We talk about receiving. We talk about infinite inherent value and actually why you aren't maybe as abundant as you would like to be. And there's a lot of shifts there. We move into express, which is really about our stories and a lot about these judgments or these perceptions that we're placing on our stories. And I know Cheryl is on the call and she had a really powerful experience with that. But we actually do live experiences where we look at some of the hardest moments of your life and we shift them in an instant, and they really start to completely change before your eyes. And then we talk about heal, and as Alexis and I just talked about why that's such a trigger for so many spiritual people, but actually healing, in my definition, in my work, is just unfolding deeper into who you are, and it does not have to do with you being broken or not fixed or not whole or not part of the unity at all. And so this work is really designed, it's a self-study now. I used to run it weekly. I even recommend people do, thank you, Cheryl, it's a must. I even recommend people take 2 weeks per module because it's a very intensive process. It's energetically encoded. It will shift your thoughts wildly around everything that you're doing, but it has an amazingly supportive community. I'm always in there. My community manager is always in there, and the work is just really cool. I have an audio guide for every worksheet, so I try to keep people as supported as possible because it's going to bring up a lot of triggers, and I want to make sure that people feel really safe and supported. So that is available to start even today if anybody's interested.
Awesome. You just broke up there at the end. What was that you just said?
I said, that's even available today. Now that's in self-study form. So jump on
Oh,
right
yeah.
away.
It's awesome. Highly recommend it. I've taken it myself. It's amazing. Mike is an amazingly transformative teacher and guide. So yes, work with them. But thank you guys for joining us. This has been really fun. And of course, if you have any questions, you know how to reach both of us. You've got our websites and our links there, and you can always find us on Twitter and Facebook, which are also linked here. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much. This was a really exciting conversation. It's always a pleasure every time I talk to you, Alexis, and it always forces me to go deeper and deeper. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.